For analysis, we turn to Vanessa Perez. She is an associate professor of Puerto Rican and Latino studies at Brooklyn College, and she joins us here in our New York studio. Vanessa, nice to meet you. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start with just a couple of basic questions. Can you sort of paint a picture of what the economic atmosphere is like in Cuba now?
Sure. So in Cuba, for some time, there has been an effort to try to open up the economy, to bring more democratic measures. There's been agrarian reform. There have been other steps that Raul Castro has taken, all of which the Republicans here have been asking for. These are some of the measures that we've been asking for here in the United States to be able to normalize relations. And so those steps have been taking place in Cuba for some time now. They're just moving very slowly.
But describe what life is like for the average Cuban.
It's been quite some time since I've been to Cuba, but the last time I was there was about 12 years ago. But yes, you know, Cubans are in the process of opening up relations. We have, as I said, agrarian reform. Cubans are still, there's been a rise on salary caps or a lifting of salary caps, but in general, things are moving very, very slowly. The kinds of reforms that we would like to see, the kinds of freedoms that we'd like to see for the Cuban people aren't happening yet.
I know that we've seen reactions of many Cubans since Raul Castro and President Obama made this announcement of normalizing relations, and it seems overwhelmingly that they're very happy about this and have great anticipation for how this might improve living for them, particularly for entrepreneurs. But of course, there are Republican Congressmen, Marco Rubio being premier among them, who are just really against this. He was vitriolic in his opposition and expressing his disapproval of this mood. Will you explain and because he was emotional about it, the emotional investment of those Cuban exiles that are here in the U.S. In this decision?
Yes, so I mean, I think one of the things that we have to understand about the Cubans who are here, who came in that first wave of Cuban migrants, my father was one of those, that they are very emotional. This is a very emotional issue for them. They left family members behind, they left property behind, they left a way of life behind. It was very traumatic. And so those are things that many of them still cling to. And so those emotional reactions, I think, are perhaps not entirely surprising, but it's certainly long overdue for us to make changes. The majority of Cubans who moved to this country after the 1980s are overwhelmingly in favor of lifting the embargo, 71% of them, in fact. And so those Cubans who came before 1980, there's still about 35% of them who are ready to lift the embargo. So you know, it breaks down very differently.
There's a real generational gap here.
Absolutely.
Even in the way you answered the question, saying your father was a Cuban immigrant, really staunchly against this, you being his offspring and descendant, you see some of the benefits of this. Do you think this is then an issue for those who oppose about hanging on to things that have happened in the past and not really rooted in the realities of today?
Yes, and I just have to say, because just in case my father is watching, he is actually very much in support of this measure.
Very good.
Even though he was one of those early Cubans, but that's not the case for the majority of early Cubans or Cubans who came, you know, prior to the 1980s. But you know, I think that it is time to move forward. I think that there are many Cubans, even those in Miami and Florida, who see that it's now time to move forward. You have to kind of wonder if some of what's happening is also just a political posturing.
Yeah, I'm sure some of it is political posturing, but those who oppose normalization of relations also say that the Castros can't be trusted. Cuba can't be trusted to hold up their end of the bargain. What's your perspective there?
You know, I think that it's very clear that they are already moving in that direction. I just think that it hasn't moved as quickly as we'd like to see it move, but they have been making moves in that direction, as I mentioned before, lifting salary caps, agrarian reform, changes in other aspects of the economy. So they're moving in that direction. It's just the one thing that hasn't changed yet is what many Republicans here would like to see before the embargo is lifted is the ending of this one-party system, right? The opportunity to have a democratic process, a voting process, and that's not happened yet. But you know, I don't think that that is the kind of threat that we once saw Cubans to be, or the Castro brothers to be.
You have friends in Cuba now, don't you? And have you spoken with them since this announcement?
I have not. So I emailed family members. I have some relatives who I emailed yesterday as soon as I learned. I haven't heard back from them yet because, as we know, that is one of the big issues, is that email access is not very easy. And even being able to speak to relatives on the phone is something that's very difficult because a lot of Cubans don't have phones that are able to make these phone calls. Relatives that I have there, we've had to, there's one phone in the neighborhood. And so we have to call the neighbor, the friend, to be able to speak to relatives.
That's one of those things that we probably can expect to see a change sooner than later in that regard. Vanessa Perez, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you being here.